Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the research station, horizon's edge, his breath fogging up as the reinforced glass as he looked out into the space. What the galaxy called the graveyard of giants lay before him. It was a field of debris that stretched for thousands of miles and was full of the broken shells of alien starships. Still can't believe it's real, whispered Sarah Mitchell, the station's lead engineer, as she walked up to him. Her reflection in the glass showed eyes that were tired and hadn't gotten a good night's sleep in weeks. Marcus slowly nodded. So far, 47 ships. Each one came from a different culture, each one silent. The ships floated in space like tombstones. Some were beautiful and curved like nautilus shells, and others were sharp and brutal in their geometric precision. Some of the ships looked like they had grown instead of being built, with surfaces that were wavy and organic. The smallest was the size of a cargo ship, and the biggest was bigger than anything human has ever built. Command is getting impatient, Sarah said, as she pulled up a holographic display on a wrist terminal. They want results, reports of salvage, something to make it okay for us to stay out here. Marcus turned away from window and set his jaw. They don't get it. This isn't just junk metal floating around in space. There is a story behind something out there, in those wrecks. Before Marcus could respond, the station's communications array came to life. The sound was very quiet, almost impossible to hear over the normal cosmic noise. But it was there, a pattern that was rhythmic and planned. Did you hear that? Marcus ran to the nearest console and quickly typed on the screen. Sarah was already next to him, her engineering instincts kicking in, isolating the frequency. Marcus, this is coming from the graveyard. Delta 7 is the grid reference. They turned on the visual feed. Delta 7 was one of the bigger derelicts. It was a huge ship shaped like a crescent moon, and its hull was scarred and pitted from what looked like hundreds of years of micrometeor impacts. The signal pulsed once more, not words, not in any language they could understand, but something that was clearly meant to happen. A pattern, a beat, a phone call. It's a distress beacon, Sarah said with a sigh. Something in that ship is still trying to reach out after all this time. Marcus' heart was racing. For 3 months, they had been surveying the graveyard, taking notes, scanning, and cataloging. Every ship they looked at had been cold, dead, and empty. But this was not the same. Get the team together, he said, his voice steady, even though he was full of adrenaline. We're going in. With the hiss of pressurized air, the salvage shuttle tinkers hope broke free from the horizon's edge. Inside, Marcus sat next to his carefully chosen team of 5 people who were the best for humanity to understand the impossible. At the age of 42, Sarah Mitchell had spent her whole career fixing things that were broken. She had fixed up mining equipment on Mars, kept life support running on colony ships that were about to fail, and once jury rigged an atmospheric processor using only spare parts and her willpower. Jamal Washington, a 28-year-old programming genius who was better at talking to machines than people, sat next to her. His augmented reality glasses always showed streams of data, and his finger twitched as he used neural implants to connect with systems. Elena Rogers, a former military engineer with a prosthetic left arm that she had made herself, was the third member. At 35, she had fought in wars, seen destruction, and learned that sometimes the best victory was just keeping something alive for one more day. The twins, Lily and Owen Parker, who were only 23 but had an almost supernatural understanding of alien technology, were also on the team. They had grown up on trading stations at the edge of known space, where they learned to see patterns in things they didn't know. Approaching the target, Marcus said as he steered the shuttle through the debris field. The crescent ship was even bigger up close. It was at least 2 miles long from tip to tip, and its surface was a mix of dark metal and what looked like crystal structures. Life support is on, Owen said as he looked around. Stable temperature, gravity. Wait, this thing is making its own gravity field. After hundreds of years of being lost, Elena said. That's impossible. But the way she said it made it sound like she was ready to change what impossible meant. They docked at what looked like a maintenance port, and the shuttle's clamps held the old hull in place surprisingly well. Sarah scanned the airlock with her scanner. Atmosphere on the other side, barely breathable. There are 70% nitrogen, 25% oxygen, and 5% things we don't know. We will need masks, but not full suits. Marcus showed them how to get through the airlock. The inside of the ship was like a cathedral, with huge spaces held up by metal and light arches that curved around. Some kind of power source they couldn't yet figure out was making the emergency light flicker in the hallways. Jamal said, the signal is coming from the central chamber. His glasses showed a holographic map of the ship's inside. About a half mile ahead, they walked carefully through hallways that looked like they were made for creatures that were much taller than people. There were symbols all above the walls, not words, but patterns that looked like they changed and moved when you looked at them from different angles. Lily stopped all of a sudden, her hand on the wall. Do you feel that? Feel what? Elena asked. And her hand automatically moved the plasma cutter on her belt. The ship, it's humming. Not just the engines, the whole thing, like it's alive. Marcus felt it too. A vibration that was so subtle it was almost subliminal, and a rhythm that seemed to pulse in time with that strange signal. They got to the main room and stopped, amazed. The room was round and hundreds of feet wide, and its walls were covered in thousands of crystal pods. There was a huge central core that pulsed with soft blue light, and each pod glowed faintly. What is this? Sarah said, something in a low voice. Jamal walked up to the nearest pod, and his scanners were working extra hard. Signatures of energy, patterns in the brain. Oh my god! They aren't storage units, they are statuses, chambers, Owen said. There's something inside them. And he puts his face close to the clear crystal. I can see shapes, figures. Marcus went to the center. The signal was strongest here, coming from a control interface that looked almost inviting. He put his hand on the surface, and the whole room reacted. Light flooded through the networks of crystals. The pods got brighter, and then, against all the odds, images began to appear in the air holographic projections of beings of all kinds. Some looked like people, some looked very different, but they all had the same look hope. There was a voice in the room, but it wasn't in words. It was in pure meaning that didn't use language at all. Help us, they all thought and felt. Please, we don't know where we are. People have forgotten us, but we still have dreams. Sarah held Marcus' shoulder tightly, and tears streamed down her face. They're still alive, every one of them, stuck in place, calling out for anyone who could hear. Marcus looked at his team and saw that everyone had the same look of determination on their face. They had come to look for old technology and scrap metal. Instead, they found something much more valuable lives that needed to be saved. We're going to need more people, he said in a low voice. Many more people. Because we're not going to leave anyone behind. Elena smiled and got her tools out right away. Then let's start working. The graveyard of giants had changed 3 weeks later. The tomb that had been quiet was now full of life. Horizon Edge had been strengthened and made bigger, making it a real base of operations. More ships had come, civilian volunteers, engineers from Earth and the colonies, and even a few military experts who had heard about the project and couldn't stay away. But the real work was going on inside the Crescent ship, which they called Dreamkeeper. Marcus walked through the main room, which was now full of people. Around the edge, there were temporary workstations with specialists at each one trying to figure out the alien technology. The crystalline pods still glowed, but this time they were linked to medical equipment, monitoring stations, and power regulators for people. Sarah met him at the central core and said, "We've been able to stabilize 15 pods so far." She looked tired but full of energy, running on coffee and willpower. The statuses system were not working. This ship's power source has been getting worse for hundreds of years. If we hadn't found them when we did, she didn't have to finish. Marcus got it. They got there just in time. "Have you been in touch with any of them?" he asked. Sarah nodded and pointed to a nearby station where Jamal was sitting, with holographic displays all around him. "Jamal has been working on it. The interface isn't meant for talking. It's not that. He's calling it empathic data transfer, which means neural patterns and emotional resonance." Marcus went up to the young programmer, who was too busy to look up. "Show me," Marcus said softly. Jamal pointed to a certain pod. Inside, in the soft light, there was a creature that looked almost human. It had skin that shone like oil on water, and eyes that were pure silver with no pupils. "Her name is—" Jamal stopped and struggled. "There's no direct translation. Whisper of Stars is the best I can do. She's been in the statuses for 437 years." 437 years? Marcus felt the weight of that number. "Can she hear us?" "Not here." "Touch." Jamal put his hand on the panel next to the pod. "Look." He shut his eyes, and the pod got brighter. The person inside moved a little. Neural patterns flowed and crossed on Jamal's screens, with human and aliens meeting in the space between. Then Marcus felt it. Not words, but feelings. Feelings. A wave of thanks that made him cry, wanting to know, wonder, and underneath it all, a deep, painful loneliness that had been there for hundreds of years. He put his own hand on the interface and let his thoughts come back. "You're not the only one. We're here. We're going to help you out." The answer came right away, a rush of hope so strong it almost knocked him over. The being's silver eyes opened and looked straight at him through the crystal. Marcus realized something important. This wasn't just about fixing machines, this was about fixing souls. The team made one breakthrough after another in the days that followed. Lily learned that the ship's system reacted to both intention and physical input. It was biomechanical, meaning it was both grown and built at the same time. Owen learned how to access the ship's historical logs, which told the sad story of Dreamkeeper. It had been a boat for refugees, bringing people from dozens of worlds that had been destroyed in some ancient disaster. The ship was broken, its navigation system wasn't working, and its crew was dying. In their desperation, they had put themselves in statuses and sent out a distress signal, hoping that someone would find them one day. "They've been calling out for 4 centuries," Owen said, his voice tight and emotional. "And we were here, the first ones to respond." Elena, on the other hand, was in charge of the restoration work. Her experience as a combat engineer was very helpful when she led teams to fix broken status pod and strengthen structures that were about to fall down. "The beautiful thing," she said to the Marcus during a break. Her prosthetic arm covered in alien oil and human grease. Is that their technology? Isn't so different from ours at its core? They just looked at the problem from different point of view. It makes sense once you get the logic. But the most meaningful moment were the ones that happened in person. They met a new person every time they stabilized a pod, enough to talk to them. Each person had their own story, loss, and dreams. There was Kavit, who looked like living crystal and had been a gardener on his home planet. He shared memories of huge botanical gardens with three sons, plants that sang, and flowers that thought through the empathic link. There was a Mira 7, a cyborg from a race that had merged with machines thousands of years ago. When she found out that her people might still be alive somewhere in the galaxy, she cried digital tears. There was a being they called Painter who didn't have vocal cords but used patterns of bioluminescence to talk. These patterns made cascading lights, shows that showed feelings that words couldn't describe. Every contact changed the human team. Sarah, who had always been interested in practical solutions, started to see beauty in the strange designs. Jamal, who was alone because of his own genius, found a connection with people whose mind worked in ways that language could never fully describe. Elena realized that a time in the military had prepared her perfectly for this. The discipline, the focus, and the knowledge that sometimes just staying alive was a win. But Lily made the most shocking find. She was working late one night in the chamber when she saw something strange about the central core. The light patterns weren't random, they were making shapes, symbols, and a language. She called Marcus right away. They stood together in front of the core and watched it paint messages in light. It's not just the refugees talking, Lily said in a voice full of awe. It's the ship itself. Marcus, Dreamkeeper is real, not AI, but real consciousness. The ship has been guarding them, keeping them safe, and waiting for someone who could help. Marcus reached out and touched the core's warm surface. He felt it then, a huge, patient presence, not human, not like any other of the refugees, but aware, being kind. For more than 400 years, the ship had sacrificed its own system and power reservoirs to keep its passengers alive. Thank you, Marcus whispered to the ship. We'll take care of it from here. You have done enough. Rest now. The core pulsed with light, and Marcus felt a wave of relief and thankfulness that seemed to come from Dreamkeeper itself. The ship had been stuck for a long time, but now help had finally come. In 6 months, the graveyard of giants became something that had never happened before in the history of the galaxy. What used to be a field of broken ships turned into a place where lost people could be found and broken people could be healed. Marcus was in what they now called Central Hub. It was a huge space station made up of the connected hulls of five different alien ships, each of which added its own style to the whole. It shouldn't have worked. The designs didn't work together. The technologies were different, and even the materials worked in a different ways. But people have always been good at making things that seemed impossible. Population report, Sarah said, as they walked through hallways that combined human industrial design with alien organic design. We've brought back to life 214 people from 43 different species. We are making the right environment for another 600 who are in stable statuses. And the ships, 17 ships, are now in use. Not all of them are ready to fly, but they are functional enough to be homes. Sarah brought up a holographic screen that showed the layout here, here, and here, where the homes are. Thanks to Kavit and his team, the agricultural dome is making enough food for everyone. The medical center is in the old cargo hauler. And wait, Marcus said, Kavit has a team? Sarah smiled. That's the best part. When we started helping more refugees, They wanted to help too. Kavit is teaching 5 different kinds of plants about botany across cultures. Mira, 7, is working with our IT department. It seems that a people's ways of building data structures is hundreds of years ahead of ours. Painter is even involved. It turns out that those light shows he does aren't just art, they're a way for everyone to talk to each other. Marcus felt very proud. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Not just rescue, but also integration community. They went into the main observation deck, which had windows that went from the floor to the ceiling, and looked out over the changed graveyard. Ships that had been dark for hundreds of years were now full of light. Small ships, both human and alien, moved between them like fireflies, bringing supplies, people, and hope. Elena was there, leading a construction crew that included 3 humans and 4 aliens that Marcus didn't know. One of them, a creature that looked like living metal, was shaping structural beams with its bare hands and seamlessly joining them to the station's framework. That's force, Elena said, seeing Marcus's face. His kind are natural metal workers. He has been showing us ways to change the way we do engineering. We're helping him understand how human power system works in return. There was cooperation all over. Lily worked with a group of young refugees, teenagers, or people who were like teenagers, teaching them human math, while they taught her their own ways of doing math. There was a lot of laughter and confusion during the exchange, but it was real. Owen had become the unofficial historian of the sanctuary, writing down every story, species, and miracles of survival. His archives were getting bigger every day, showing that people across the stars are strong. But the most amazing change may have been in Dreamkeeper itself. The old ship had become the center of sanctuary after power was restored and systems were fixed. Now, its main room was a meeting place where people and aliens could talk about their problems and work together to find solutions. Marcus went to these meetings often and was always amazed by how different everyone's views were. The tide walkers, a type of aquatic animal, came up with the answer when a water recycling system broke down. They shared technology that they had made for underwater cities. Painter's light language was able to express ideas that neither human words nor alien thought patterns could. We're getting attention, Jamal said during one of the meetings. His augmented reality glasses showing news feeds from all over the human space. Big news organizations, journals of science, even the government is paying attention. Is it good attention or bad? Both, Marcus said. Some people think this is the best thing humans have ever done. It shows that we can connect with other species and make something that everyone can use. Some people are scared. They want to know what these aliens want, if we're being naive, and if we're putting Earth in danger. Marcus knew this would happen. It was normal to be afraid, especially when you didn't know what was going to happen. He had also seen what happened when fear was overcome. Let them come, he said. Open invitation. Let anyone who wants to see what we're doing here come. They could meet Kebet and see his gardens. Teach them what Mira 7 knows. Tell them what these people are not invaders or threats. They are refugees who just want a chance to live. The invitation was sent out, and visitors slowly and carefully started to show up. Scientists, diplomats, and journalists all came expecting to find something scary. Instead, they found a group of people. Ambassador Chen, a strict woman from Earth, came with security forces and a look of suspicion in her eyes. Marcus took her on the tour himself, showing her every part of the sanctuary. They stopped in the Kaveth Gardens, where plants from a dozen different worlds grew in carefully tended areas. The crystalline gardener was showing a group of human kids a flowering vine that made fruit grow in time with music. The kids sing to them, Kaveth said through the translation device that Jamal had made. The plants respond. The plants need song to grow, and the songs get meaning as the plant grows. The kids sang. their young voices shaky but sincere, and the vines blossomed in front of their eyes, making small growing fruits. Ambassador Chen stayed quiet and watched. Then she asked quietly, "What do you need from Earth?" "Understanding," Marcus said. "Help, not military, not political, just the understanding that we're doing here is important. For hundreds of years, these beings have been alone. They don't need Earth's help or control. They need to be welcomed back into a galaxy that forgot about them." For 3 days, the ambassador was there. She had made friends with Mira 7, learned some basic light language from the painter, and tasted fruit from Kavit's garden by the time she left. Her report back to Earth was very positive, and help started to come in. Things they needed, people who help out, materials, but more importantly, being recognized. The United Earth government made the sanctuary an official neutral zone, meaning it wasn't Earth property and wasn't subject to its laws. It was a free space where everyone was equal. News spread beyond the reach of the people. People in the galactic community, such as it was, paid attention. Ships started coming from species that humans had never met before. Some brought their own lost refugees, while others were just curious about these strange people who fixed things that were broken. And through it all, Dreamkeeper sang its patient song, which was the heart of a growing community that showed one simple truth: compassion could cross any divide. On a quiet Tuesday morning, the sanctuary's communication array picked up the signal. It was different from the distressed beacons they were used to seeing. It was more complicated and had a clearer purpose. Not a call for help, but a question. "We've heard that you made a place for the lost. Is that true?" Jamal followed the signal's path, his face pale. "You have to see this, Marcus. The signal is coming from the outer rim, which is outside of mapped space. There are hundreds of sources, not just one. A lot, maybe thousands." The team met in the communication center and watched as Jamal's system plotted the incoming signals. Each one stood for a ship, a group, or a community of people who had been forced to leave their homes and had heard rumors of the sanctuary and dared to hope. Marcus turned on the response system, and his voice stayed steady even though they were facing a lot. "This is Marcus Chen from the Sanctuary of the Lost Ships. Yes, it's true. We have space. We have things we can use. We're here to help if you need it." The response was huge and quick. Within days, ships started to arrive. They were on the dead husk they were used to. They were damaged ships, limping along on engines that weren't working, carrying refugees who had been wandering for years, sometimes decades. The Eternal Wanderer was a generational ship that had left its home world 300 years ago to get away from a dying star. The kids on the board had never known a real home. They were born and raised in the cold hallways of a ship that was supposed to have ended generations ago. The fleet of the scattered people was made up of 17 small ships. They were all that was left of a civilization that had been destroyed by war. They had been running for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to stop. Mercy's Edge was a medical ship that had turned into a refugee ship when its crew found a planet with a plague and couldn't leave the survivors behind. For 20 years, they had been looking for a place that would take in sick and dying people. Every new person brought new problems. The sanctuary's resources were running low. Food production barely kept up with demand. Space to live became very valuable. There weren't enough medical supplies. But every new arrival also brought new answers. The engineers at Eternal Wanderer had special knowledge of closed system life support. The scattered people were great at finding useful things in trash and turning them into technology. The medical staff from Mercy's Edge brought knowledge of diseases and treatments they had never seen before. We're becoming something bigger than we planned, Sarah said during an emergency meeting. The core team looked tired and worn out from not getting enough sleep and too much stress. We began to try to save one ship. We're trying to save everyone now, Elena said. Then we need to think bigger. We can't just be safe place anymore. We have to be a center, a place where different species can meet, learn from each other, and make something new. A community center in space? Why not? Lily said, and Owen smiled tiredly. We already have representatives from 70 different species. We have programs for sharing technology, culture, and working together on projects between different species. We're not just saving refugees, we're making something that has never existed before. Marcus looked around at his tired but determined team. They were correct. The sanctuary had changed from what it was meant to do. It was becoming a proof of concept, showing that diversity wasn't just possible, it was a strength. Then let's make it official, he said. We're not just the sanctuary anymore, we're the crossroads, a place where anyone from any world can come to learn, trade, find shelter, or just meet someone new. During a ceremony that brought together all the species in the sanctuary, the rechristening took place. The setting for Cavett's garden was a huge biodome full of plants from all over the galaxy that all grew together in a perfect harmony. Painter made a light show that told the story of the sanctuary with colors and patterns that went beyond words. Mira 7 wrote a digital symphony that used sounds from all over the homeworlds that were represented. The kids from Eternal Wanderer sang in perfect harmony with human voices, making music that had been heard before. And in the middle of it all, Dreamkeeper glowed with a soft light. It was the old ship that had started it all and was now watching over the community it had helped build. But not everyone was happy. Marcus saw a group of new people who hadn't joined the festivities in the shadows of the ceremony. They were a Hakesh, a warrior race that had come 3 days before. Their ship was damaged in what they said was a training accident. Thorn, their leader, who had scars from battle, came up to Marcus after the ceremony. This is great, Thorn said, and his translator turned his rough voice into smooth English. But can it last? You bring together the weak, the lost, and the broken. What happens when the strong come to take what you have made? Marcus looked the warrior in the eye. Then we protect it. Together. Everyone here has something to offer, even strength when it needs. Thorn's strength isn't just about fighting, it's about being strong and being part of a community. The ability to live when everything says you should die. For a long time, Thorn didn't say anything. Then surprisingly, he laughed. It was harsh, barking sound. Human, you are either very smart or very dumb. But I have to admit that your stupidity has made something worth protecting. The Rahakesh will stay. You will see if your team can live in the real world. It was the start. Not perfect, but real.